How's everybody doing? I believe the message was to celebrate, and we are here to celebrate Dr. King's message. It is, though, a sad day. 43 years since the assassination of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. But his work continues, and it's more necessary today, or it's as necessary today as it ever was. And we have a number of speakers and artists and poets that are going to come up here and share with you why the work is necessary and energize us for doing the work. I would like to begin. I'm your MC, by the way, for this evening. My name is David Van Arsdale, and I'm a professor of sociology at Onondaga Community College. The idea that education cuts are going to get in the way, or could get in the way, of any one of those kids making their way to a college classroom should wreck all of us. And that's why we've got a lot of work in front of us. Our first speaker tonight is going to be Reverend Kevin Agee. Reverend Agee is the minister at Hops Memorial CME Church in this neighborhood. I'd like to welcome him up to the microphone right now.
Good evening. Oh, come on, we can do better than that. Good evening. All right, that's a little better. Thank you so very much. On the one hand, truly it is an honor and a privilege to stand before you, as Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. is one of my favorite theologians and contemporary prophets. On the other hand, I share similar sentiments with Professor Van Arsdale. On the one hand, these wonderful, beautiful children who just sang encouraged us to celebrate. And we do celebrate the legacy of a great man on the 43rd anniversary of his assassination. But on the other hand, my heart is deeply saddened and troubled that we have to assemble together for the reason that we have to assemble this afternoon. For we gather here together this day, exactly 43 years to the day after the assassination of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Some 47 years, 7 months, and 7 days after the March on Washington, where he rendered his famous I Have a Dream speech. And some 234 years, 8 months after the signing of the Declaration of Independence. Some of us have a tendency to forget that when the March on Washington was organized in 1963, the setting where the I Have a Dream speech was rendered, sometimes we have such a tendency to focus on Dr. King as a civil rights leader that we forget that the primary reason why the March on Washington was organized in 1963 was economic justice, economic opportunity, and economic empowerment for all of God's children. Sometimes we forget that Bayard Rustin was the lead organizer of that movement, that Asa Philip Randolph and the Pullman Porters Union and others from the labor movement collaborated with Dr. King and the civil rights movement to put together the March on Washington in 1963. Let me call your attention to some of the less oft-quoted portions of Dr. King's I Have a Dream speech. Near the beginning of the I Have a Dream speech, Dr. King said, when the architects of our republic wrote the magnificent words of the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence, they were signing a promissory note to which every American was to fall heir. This note was a promise that all men, and I believe if he were alive today, he would have said people instead of men, but that all men would be guaranteed the inalienable rights of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Dr. King went on to say, and so we've come to cash the check, a check that will give us upon demand the riches of freedom and the security of justice. My brothers and sisters, what a travesty it is this afternoon that we have to come before you and say that some 43 years after Dr. King's assassination, some 47 years, 7 months, and 7 days after the March on Washington, some 234 years and 8 months to the day of the signing of the Declaration of Independence, what a travesty it is to have to stand before you and say that that check is still marked insufficient funds. That check celebrated only the third or fourth time that they passed an on-time budget in the last 30 years. While we look at Wisconsin and Ohio and multiple other states in this great union trying to dismantle the rights of workers to earn a decent living, I stand before you today and say, it is a travesty that our priorities are so inverted. It is a travesty that appeasing the minority of our population is such a high priority that we can forget about the overwhelming majority of the population of this great country. I remember reading some statistics recently that the wealthiest 5% of our population earn over 63.5% of all of this nation's wealth. And on the other hand, approximately 80% of the population of this great country earn only 13% of the income. I'll say to you that there's something wrong with that picture. It's not that all of us who are in the 80%, I don't know about the rest of you, but I'm in the 80%. I don't believe that the 80% of us are all lazy. I don't believe that the 80% of us are all unwilling to work. I stand before you as a reasonably well-educated human being, a reasonably intelligent human being. I've been working almost nonstop since I was 17 years old, and I'm still among the 80% rather than the 5%. But it seems a travesty that public policy makers on almost every level of our government seem to think it's a greater priority to appease the 5% than it is to care about the needs of the 80%. If the 500 folk at the Syracuse City School District has to lay off, I wonder if they're celebrating that budget the same way. I wonder if the folk that are still on unemployment here, I wonder if they're celebrating that budget the same way. I wonder if some of the members of my congregation who have master's degrees that had to resort to doing janitorial work because they couldn't find a better job with a master's degree, I wonder if they're celebrating that same budget the same way. All levels of government who have the audacity to point to the illusion that supposedly our government was founded on Christian principles. The rhetoric sounds nice, but somewhere along the line, I don't think my policymakers are reading the same Bible I do. Maybe they're right and I'm wrong. Maybe I wasted my money on all the years I spent attending theological seminary. But when I read the Bible, I see a passage in the Bible that tells me that the love of money is the root of all kinds of evil. Could it possibly be that our government on all levels has been corrupted by the love of money? Could it be that some of the wealthiest stakeholders in our country have been corrupted by the love of money? It's something to think about. When it becomes more of a priority to make sure that millionaires and billionaires get a tax break than it is to make sure that these beautiful children that sang in this choir have an opportunity to receive a quality public education, I think that signals the fact that our priorities are inverted. When it's more important to appease millionaires and billionaires with a tax break than to be able to hire enough police officers to keep our city streets safe so that our young people won't have to dodge bullets on a regular basis, I think that our priorities are inverted. When it's more important to appease millionaires and billionaires than to assure that all of God's children who are willing to go to work every day can find a decent job that will pay them a living wage and health care benefits so that they can take care of their families, I think that our priorities are inverted. When it's more of a priority to appease millionaires and billionaires for the tax break than it is to invest enough money in Medicaid to be able to take care of the Medicare needs of those who are unable to take care of themselves, including our elderly population. I believe that our priorities are inverted. They are. And you know, I've heard the rhetoric. I've heard the rhetoric from Democrats. I've heard the rhetoric from Republicans. I've heard the rhetoric from independents. I've heard the rhetoric of everybody talking about how devastating the economy is, and how we all have to share. But it seems to me as though the share is not equal. And the fact of the matter is, even if the share were equal, the share would not be equitable. You see, the fact of the matter is, again, I think that even though we profess to have a government that's based upon Christian principles, again, I don't think our policy members are reading the same Bible that I am. You see, when I read the Bible and I think about who's being asked to make the brunt of the sacrifices, I don't believe that those who are least able to make the sacrifices ought to be the ones that are making the overwhelming majority of the sacrifices. As a matter of fact, I don't see where those who are most able to sacrifice are making any of the sacrifices. You see, when I read the Bible, I see in Luke 12:48 where Jesus said, those to whom much is given, much will be required, and those to whom more has been given, of them more will be required. I just don't understand why our priorities are inverted the way they are. So, my brothers and sisters, I come before you this afternoon, reminding you that unfortunately, the trends in public policy are dangerous. The trends in public policy are an outright assault on all of us who are in the 80%. And as you look at not only what's going on with our budget in New York State, but if you look at those asinine laws that were passed in Wisconsin and Ohio, and you look at what other states are trying to do around the country, it really drives home very poignantly one of my favorite quotations from Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. And perhaps my favorite quote from Dr. King is not a part of the I Have a Dream speech, nor is it a part of the I've Been to the Mountainside speech that he rendered when he was in Memphis, Tennessee. And let me say parenthetically, when he was assassinated 43 years ago today, he was in Memphis, Tennessee, advocating for striking sanitation workers to earn a decent wages. And if you look at the public policy that's being made all around the country, it really drives home what I feel is one of the most poignant quotes that Dr. King ever rendered, and it's one that I have posted on my Facebook page. Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. Therefore, in that spirit, I encourage you to be mindful of the words of the prophet Amos, let justice roll down like waters and righteousness like a mighty stream. So together, let us save the dream and end the nightmare that